In this video, you're going to learn how to do a hip hinge or a deadlift. In order to be able to do this, you're going to need a few tools. One is a stick. It could be a hockey stick, broomstick, PVC piping, whatever you have around the house. You're also going to need some kind of small weight, an elastic band, some type of workout bench, table, couch, or chair, and the wall. Now, as you're doing the hip hinge or deadlift, I don't want this to be painful at all. However, you may feel some pretty significant pull down the back of your legs here, a big stretch in the back, but I don't want this to produce any back pain at all. If this is the case, this isn't the right exercise for you yet. I also don't expect you to master this all in one go. We're going to go through a lot of different steps here, how to be able to get through the progression of how to do a hip hinge or deadlift. And I just want you to get to the point that you feel is a good challenge for you and isn't painful for you. And if you get through the whole progression, then that's great. So to start off, what we're going to do is use the stick or dowel along your back. So if you just place it along the middle of your spine here, it should be in contact with your butt, your upper back, and the back of your head. And this is going to work as a feedback tool for you so that you know that you're keeping that stacked torso or long spine or neutral spine position. A lot of people, when they go to do this hip hinging or deadlifting type motion, they'll round through their back and they'll either come off on the bottom here or come off on the top. And this places more stress on the spine. So ideally, what you want to be able to do is to keep those 3 points of contact as you push your hips backwards. The other thing that some people will do is to hyperextend their back. So they'll end up kind of in a position like this, where they still have contact on their butt and the back of their head, but they've lost this contact in the mid back, or this space here becomes a lot bigger. Instead of just having about the width of your hand to be able to fit in through there, it's like they'll develop the whole fist could go in through that space. So to reiterate that, the same concept here, that you want your butt, your upper back, and the back of your head to touch the dowel, and then you're going to push your hips backwards and try to keep contact with all 3 points. Go ahead and give that a try. Once you feel like you have that concept of being able to keep these 3 points of contact of the butt, the upper back, and the back of the head against the dowel, the next thing is to consider the angle of the shin. So it should be staying pretty much vertical. And if you think you might be having a hard time with that, so you're coming into this type of position here where the ankles are bending, then what you can do is set yourself up against a bench or a couch or the edge of a chair, so that when you go to push your hips backwards, your knees can't bend forwards. And so this will help to teach you that pattern of sitting back versus your knees going forwards. Once you feel like you have the hang of this, then you can step away from that assistance or guide and then repeat the same thing to make sure that you can still push your hips backwards. This basically puts the weight into the heels or the back half of the foot and activates the muscles along the back side of the legs and hips. So that should be starting to look like a hip hinge there now. But there is one other thing that I want you to consider before we start adding weight into it, and this is the idea of intra-abdominal pressure. So if you have some type of elastic band, what I want you to do is to put that around your waist. And so again, this works as a feedback tool here. It is wanting to pull in against me like this. And what I'm going to do is take a breath in to push out against it. So I'm creating this pressure within my abdomen that's pushing out against the band. And I should be able to maintain this pressure regardless of whether I'm breathing in or breathing out. And I should be able to maintain it when I go through that hip hinging type position throughout the entire thing. So I don't want it to be able to cinch in here as I'm going through this motion. I want to be able to create the pressure this way and maintain it throughout the entire lift or the entire motion. If you feel like you have the concept of doing a hip hinge where you've been able to keep the stick along your back and do a hip hinge, essentially maintaining this stacked idea of your pelvis, your rib cage, and your head all being in line with each other or keeping a neutral spine. So if you can keep those three contact points and push your hips backwards, and you feel like you've been able to create and maintain intra-abdominal pressure throughout that hip hinging motion, then the next step is to be able to take those cues away. So now without a stick and without a band around your waist, you're going to try to recreate that same pattern. We are still going to use one cue or assistance here, and that's the wall. So you're going to set yourself up close against the wall. Feet are about shoulder width apart. And you're just going to push your hips backwards to touch the wall. And if you can do that fairly easily, then you're going to come out a little bit. I will say that this builds really quickly, so don't make those steps out too big at once. So same concept here. I'm going to try to push my hips back and I can touch fairly easy. So I'm going to come out a little bit farther here. And so now I'm kind of getting to that point where it's a challenge for me to push my hips backwards. So I'm still thinking of that idea of this long spine or being able to keep my hips, my rib cage, and my head all in alignment with each other. And I'm still thinking about intra-abdominal pressure, being able to maintain that pressure in my abdomen as I go through this motion here. And I just have the wall behind me as a cue to touch my butt against it. Now, this isn't a sit back in towards the wall. I don't want you to fall here in towards the wall. It's as if you're closing a door behind you. So you're just giving it this nudge, but you're still staying balanced as you do it. And if you feel like you can do that fairly easily, the next step is to come away from the wall and repeat the same process. So now you're still trying to push your hips backwards. You're still trying to keep that flat or long back. You're still maintaining pressure in your abdomen here. And because you're pushing your hips backwards, your shins will stay pretty much vertical. And so if you've got to this point and things are still feeling pretty good for you, then it's time to start adding some weight. I want you to grab a small weight. For me, this is a 35-pound kettlebell, but literally 5-10-pound weight would be a great starting point just to get the motion of it. So what you're going to do is take that weight and bring it right up against your chest. So if you hold it against your chest here, it's going to stay there the entire time. So exact same thoughts here now. I'm creating pressure in my abdomen. My back or spine is keeping that long position, and I'm pushing my hips backwards so that I can create that pull in the back of my legs and through the back of my hips. And if you can do that fairly well, then the next step is to let the weight hang here and try to create the same pattern. Now, for some reason, this is the spot that trips a lot of people up. As soon as they let the weight hang down here, they start to do this and create that rounding back there again. And you're going to try to avoid that position. So the weight is just along for the ride. Your thought is still the hips going backwards here. So as if I was trying to touch my butt back towards the wall, that I'm going to create that big pull in the back of my legs and the back of my hips. Now, if I have a one weight that I'm holding on to here, then that'll go in between my legs. Basically, it'll land in between my feet. And if I had two weights or a barbell, my hands will basically follow the path of my legs. What we don't want to see is where the weight starts to get too far out. So talked about this concept of the weight landing in between my feet. That's an ideal position for the back to still be pretty strong. As soon as that weight starts to get a little bit forwards here, you can already feel that that's a much harder position. It's a bigger lever or bigger moment arm for the back to be able to hold on to. So you're going to think of that weight just landing right in between your feet, and you're creating that by pushing your hips backwards. So if you can do that, you can do a hip hinge or a deadlift, and then you just have to safely progress the weight up with whatever you feel comfortable. Again, this should not be a painful position for your back. So if it is, it's either not being done correctly, you're not quite ready for it, or the weight is too big at this time, but totally normal to feel the pull in the legs here. Okay, so go ahead and experiment with that.